shut people up and shut people down. They don't let you speak up. It's interesting how they got the First Amendment, which is freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and all this kind of stuff. And you really don't have that freedom. Now, looking back on American history, which is something I do regularly, because again, there's a correlation between all of the things that I'm talking about. So, looking back on the history, the initial alleged persons who came to the United States were persecuted people who were religiously persecuted, as they say. So in this like the Pilgrims, the Protestants, and the Quakers were like the three main, I guess, religions at the time. But they all, I think, fell under Christianity. So I don't even know what that's all about. But the whole idea was not to have religious persecution and also have freedom to speak up. And the contradiction has been you're not allowed to speak up. And when you're not allowed to speak up, where there's no freedom. Now, I'm not talking about criticism or just running your mouth like Trump does. So Trump is not freedom of speech. Trump is an idiot that just keeps talking and talking and talking because he likes to hear himself talk and he thinks he's still on The Apprentice. The little thing I seen today from his last presidential conversation to the public looked more like he was on The Apprentice, trying to be cute and funny while he got all these things going on simultaneously at once, which is again an embarrassment to just me being a United States citizen and also a person of color in this country who recognizes I'm an oppressed group, but I'm not oppressed in the sense that I don't allow myself to be oppressed because I'm not going to be afraid to say what needs to be said. And not only have I been ostracized by white folks, well, matter of fact, I've been less ostracized probably by white folks than some of my people of color because when somebody like me speaks up, everybody want to back up. Like I don't know her like that, or you shamed. Why are you being ashamed? We got to stop letting the one Negro get tied to the tree and get whipped by the one man while we all watch. That's the part that I don't understand. And the other part that I don't understand, going back into the church, as I deviate again, is while I'm talking online is this last incident with the pastor's wife wearing a new dress. No, so I'm not against that. That's not what I'm saying here. Actually, that dress was fire. If I could wear that dress, I'll have it on too. What I didn't appreciate was the two pastors going back and forth like gangbangers, the things that these pastors were saying to each other, and then the congregation hooping and hollering, egging it on, instigating it on was so sad. Where was the Christian in that day of the church? When the pastor is instead of him saying, forgive that person, I'm gonna forgive that person for what he feels or say, he coming back at him hardcore. Now, what kind of stuff is that? So before the next person want to fix their mouth to say what I'm saying wrong or not saying correct, you need to look at them people that Drewski was imitating and start doing more about those issues then, because even that conversation was interesting where people was blasting on Drewski being disrespectful for God when he wasn't disrespecting God. He was mimicking or mocking the people that are disrespecting their congregations with that rhetoric, that circus. And it seems like between the politics and the preachers, all of them are running a circus. All of them are running a show. And as citizens of the United States of America, we're all being entertained. But at the same time, it's like being in a library. Shh, you're not allowed to say anything. And I'm not that person. Um, so in looking at the conversations about the lies, um, I got this from off the whatchamacallit. It's forbidden to discuss religion and politics due to their deep emotional ties, polarizing nature, and tendency to create conflict with strong beliefs, often leading to arguments rather than understanding, especially in polite company or workplaces where harmony Productivity and legal compliance to avoid discrimination are priorities. While etiquette suggests avoiding these topics to prevent social friction, some argue that avoiding them prevents building bridges as these subjects profoundly shape personal identity and social tile issues, making open, respectful dialogue crucial despite the risk. So, to forbid people to talk about what's important. Politics or religion are the two umbrella things that we all live under, one way or another. And I'll say this even to the atheist. I'm not an atheist. I just don't do Christianity, but I don't consider myself an atheist. People try to give me a title like agnostic or whatever. I'm not that. I just don't believe in Christianity. Okay. Do you call Muslims agnostics and atheists because they don't believe in Christianity? Do you call the Jew agnostic or atheist because they don't believe in Christianity? So I'm not none of those. I got my own belief system, and that's cool because you're allowed to in this country from the last I checked. Now, what happens is not being able to talk about these two very important things that rule us. Politics and religion rules us wholeheartedly. It rules us. And we can't have conversations about it. And the thing about it is respecting each other's differences because we are different in all former fashions. And so I was watching a video one day about these three a Jewish man, a Muslim man, and a Christian man. This is not a joke. This is just a actual YouTube video that they were kind of talking about their likes and their differences. And to be honest with you, the like is one God, one big G. The other parts of it is so like the Christians Jesus, the Jews Abraham, and the Muslims Muhammad, the prophet. But if you look at all three of them, they're all teachers or prophets. So I'm not sure what's the difference. The difference is migration and translation. So when you take this conversation back 5,000 years ago or less than that, with depending, it's the same thing. It's about migration and translation. And so the one thing that I'm going to be going forward is how the Greeks played a very big role in the appropriation of Egypt. Okay, and I've said this over and over again, and it's important that we understand this because United States of America's white people are doing it as we speak. Okay, the same way Greeks appropriated Egypt through cultural appropriation. So, example would be Greek appropriation of Egypt refers to the significant cultural exchange. They called it borrowing, okay, and adaptation of Egyptian elements by the Greeks, particularly during the Ptolemaic period, resulting in rich Greco-Egyptian hybrid culture. So, like white people, which is colonization, they came in, they liked the house, and they took over it. So, like, just imagine me coming to your house and be like, "Oh, I love your house. I ain't going nowhere. I'm gonna take it over, call it my own, and add to a little bit of decoration so I can make it look like it's mine." That's what this is. When they say history repeats itself, it really does. It's rescripted. So again, we have a dark culture being appropriated by a lighter culture, and so the Greco-Egyptian hybrid culture where Greeks adopted Egyptian gods. They said adopted instead of appropriated. Egyptian gods like Zeus and on religious practices like Isis. And I brought Isis and Osiris up before. I will talk about them not today, but one day later. Artistic styles and scientific knowledge, while also influencing Egypt through Hellenization, creating a complex interaction rather than a simple takeover. Did you hear that? This process involved both the elite rulers presenting themselves as pharaohs and ordinary Greeks integrating deeply into Egyptian life, showing a dynamic two-way. So it's interesting how they didn't say Greek people stole Egyptianology. Matter of fact, they even named Egypt. Egypt is really Kemet. and they called Egypt, which I think means dark face or dark land or dark sand, something like that. And I go back to the Egypt thing because they try to dispute. So now that I'm kind of learning a little bit, it starts to make a little that came along much later. But so when they talk about interesting, when they talk about racism, they say racism is a United States construct. I will almost doubt that that's true. And I say that it may not have been called racism back in these times, but it's almost the same thing because the Egyptians were of dark race and the Greeks and the Romans were of white race. Now, again, they say people have said, people who know who they are have said that Europe was not a part of the early adoption of Christianity. That's not true because, and I was saying this the other day, like, what did the geographical maps look like in the past versus the present? Because Rome and Greek are considered European countries, even though they're in the Mediterranean across the what's that, the Red Sea. And I've always challenged and questioned how Egyptians could be light complexion when Sudanese people are like the darkest humans on the face of this earth, and how they're only separated by a river. And they did a lot of trade and everything else. And the so you don't hear a lot about the Sudan Egypt uh collaboration as much as you do with Egyptian and Romans, because if you look at some of Greek and Roman architecture, you can see some of the mimicking they've done to Egypt, right? And Egypt was around longer than those two civilizations. And so to kind of go back to talking about us as a people and understanding, why we are in a situation we are in, because we are doing exactly what Christianity was made to do. So when Constantine, and I'm probably pronouncing that word wrong, Constantine, I've got some nasal stuff going on. So Constantine, who started using Christianity in Rome, did so to bring order and to kind of follow the lead. Now, from what my homework says, Christianity started, the first Christian practice started in Armenia, which is in the Caucasus, and I talked about the Caucasus in one of my earlier videos. See how this all like coming together? So I talked about the Caucasus Mountains, the word Caucasian, and people use the word Caucasian, and majority white folks are not Caucasians. They are Anglo-Saxon. Caucasians are people like Armenia, which is more like, what's that, West Asia people. They're not European, they're West Asia, so the Caucasus Mountains. However, Blumberg, I think his name is Blumbach or Blumberg, um, came up with the Caucasian narrative when he looked at the mountains and said, "Oh, I'm going to call us Caucasians because we're so glorious." And so all that's some ideological type stuff that they was on some grandiosity long time ago, and they made it science. They made it into science. And so, but the thing about it is, one has to understand when they talk about separation of church and state, to understand that they're more aligned with each other than they're not. And I was trying to figure out, like, how does church and state separate when they are very overlapping, right? Because it's about money and it's about power. Okay. And the church, which has been around for a long time, whether it's just Christianity or whatever, there's a lot of capitalism in religion. And so that too is important. So when I talk about, again, the Trinity of colonization, which is another version of white supremacy, Christianity, which is another version of white supremacy, and capitalism, which is another version of white supremacy. when I say Christianity is part of white supremacy, I'm not necessarily saying that it did not show up in Africa first. What I'm saying is it was used then and now to weaponize and oppress a group of people, a lot of people, right? Because they showed up with the Bible one of my imagination. I think I said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. In my imagination, I imagine this is more theoretical, I guess. In my imagination, I imagine that when the Europe, because I think they said that Christianity kind of spread to Africa and Europe around the same time, because again, Paul and Saint Mark and all them was on a mission, and they were all just kind of spreading the word. And actually, what's interesting, a lot of this Christianity stuff happened way after Jesus had passed on already. So again, just really trying to conceptualize and make a connection between history and biblical or theology. It's a lot going on there. But to get back to Ethiopia, because I don't think I put them in there. I was talking about Egypt, but I didn't really get to Ethiopia. The key word with Christianity being in Ethiopia is adopted. Okay, not Christianity was in Rome, Christianity was in Greece, Christianity was in Egypt, it was in Armenia, it was Turkey, all these different places, which Turkey is also a Caucasus place. Ethiopia adopted it first as a national religion. So they put it in practice, like, okay, y'all, this is what we doing now. And then others follow. So even though Christianity was in certain places first, Ethiopia adopted it. And then the other thing from what I'm looking at and reading or listening to is the Ethiopian Bible. So when you talk about the King James version, the King James version is just what it's called, a version of the narrative that King James approved of when he was king, and took stuff out of the Bible so people wouldn't know thing that they needed to know. Ethiopia, on the other hand, kept the Bible in its origins. And even then, we still don't know to what degree it's true and what's not. None of us are. None of us is going. I cannot argue with nobody. Nobody can't argue with me because we weren't there. All of us are getting the same information over and over again from the same sources or whatever. Some people, I don't know where they get all their information from. I know where I get my information from, and I could tell you where I get my information from. However, the thing about it is none of us can stand on what we know. None of us can, because we all we all going by everybody else and what they said over these thousands and thousands of years. I go by not only what I read, what I search for, because like a lot of times I'm like one of the things I think is really profound for me is when I start, I guess the what they call algorithms play a part in this, because like I might be thinking about something, typing it in. Next thing you know, I start getting all these things just popping up, and it just kind of leads me to one thing over another. And I was told a long time ago, like I'm not no dummy, so I know how to read and comprehend this stuff. And if I don't, I'll find a way to find out, what's going to help, or whatever. But just for clarity purposes, I don't profess to be the perfect person in all of this information, but I will say, and I'll say it every time I probably do these shows when I talk about Jesus, I do believe Jesus was a person. I just don't think he was a deity, and I don't believe in the resurrection. Now, I read another person's post on Facebook. Sometimes, like people say, I probably took it to heart because it sounded like something that was being inadvertently said to me, but not directly to me. Hint, hint. And so when reading that post about I guess the metaphorical aspect of the resurrection versus the actual, if there was an actual resurrection, right? And I almost believe this person was probably putting that out there for in the world for me, because when I was reading, I was like, yeah, this sounds like he's writing this to me. But the resurrection is a big part of Christianity. I ain't here to make people not be Christians. I'm just not here for that. You decide on your own. I like I said, I was going down rabbit holes trying to figure out, like, okay, if is looking at Mother Mary, Virgin Mary, and Jesus, is that any form of idolizing? I'm looking at all this kind of stuff. Like, I'm typing in words, keywords, and I'm getting this stuff fed back to me, and it all just really answers my questions. A lot of it's answering my questions. And so it's just so much information. So I don't want to get too deep into this, because I want to respect people's time listening to this, because I'm already into 40 minutes. But I just want to go back again. Where was Christianity first? Okay. So according to the information, Roman context, while Christianity existed in the Roman Empire, it only became legal under Constantine in 313 CE, which is after Christ, right? And wasn't the official state religion until later. That's the key thing here. So Ethiopia adopted it as a official state religion before Roman did, but Christianity was in Rome before it was in Ethiopia. Okay? And it wasn't official language until Axum's adoption even earlier, Axum being Ethiopia. Key figure, I can't pronounce his name, Frumentius, a missionary, played a crucial role in converting King Esna, solidifying the faith place in Axum. So Axum again is Ethiopia. The kingdom of Axum in modern day Ethiopia became officially Christian in the 4th century, around 330 CE, under King Esna, making it one of the first states to adopt Christianity. Christianity then spread to Axum via Rome, trade routes, and missionaries like Frumentius, establishing a strong, unique Christian heritage in Ethiopia that predates much of European Christianity. So, again, let me just end here, and I can always continue on another day. For people who argue that Christianity was in Africa before colonization, you're right. You're correct. I'm not arguing with you. You're right. However, it was still in Europe if you consider Rome Europe. If you consider Greece Europe and Rome Europe, it was in Europe first. And although it was in Europe first, it wasn't adopted by them first. Now, the part that my argument is, no matter if it was in Africa first or not, it was still used to colonize Africans into slaves, as well as using it to destroy other cultures and ethnic groups across the world. And that's what's important, right? So even though this whole idea of Jesus, his resurrection, this culture of loving and all that kind of stuff, fine and dandy. But let me just say this as I wrap this up. For this to be the largest Christian in Christianity being the largest followed religion of the world, especially with United States being number one followers. Why are we in this situation? And why have we stayed in this situation? And why are we still in this situation? And what role is Christianity really playing in the lives of all these people who call themselves followers of Christ? But yet we got all these different things going on. And for my local folks, with Milwaukee especially, Not to say that this is not in other places around the world, but we got several mega churches of our own here. And ironically, one, two, about four of the mega churches that we have are all over there, like on North 76th Street in the Brown Deer, Mill Road, Brown Deer, Good Hope. All of these mega churches are over there in the Bradley Road. All of those mega churches is way over there. It's about five or six of them, and then the rest of them are all existing in the 53206 zip code. So what is that saying? So instead of arguing back and forth with me or feeling like I'm saying something wrong, put that in perspective. You know, and that's one of the parts that I'm really here to say. It's like y'all arguing about the wrong stuff. Just like Drewski. They talking about this man who's making fun or mocking these pastors' behaviors instead of coming after the pastors. That is such a black Christian thing to do. Is attack the wrong thing. There's so much work out here to be done without the cameras, without the photoshops, without the attention. Just do your job, period. Without it having to be mentioned and glorified. Let what they say, let the fruits of your labor show through your communities that you in. Most of y'all who are pastoring at these churches of 53206 don't even live in no 53206. Y'all driving y'all nice cars out somewhere else. So that goes to show a lot of the hypocrisy right there. That you're not even really invested in your community. I would almost beg y'all this. Everybody who is a member, leader of a church you go to, if y'all moved into those communities, y'all have better results. I will almost bet that. It may be a little uncomfortable for both parties at the beginning, but I believe strongly if everybody was to move back into the area in which they go to church or lead at the church, go back to those communities from which you came, you'll see a different. I'll give 5 years, you'll see something different. Because it's hard to tell a person to come out of something and you out of it, but they still in it. And as black folks, we live by example. So while you're telling me how to get out of a situation because you out of it, what are what happened to this neighborly thing? You're not even my neighbor in order to criticize me on why I can't come out of this situation. And that's all I'm saying. And this is based on not only experience but observation. I mean, I'm only not even 2 miles from where I grew up at, if not three. I'm still on Burline. I'm between Burline Center. I'm not far removed. And I bought my house, so I live here. And I feel good. One more thing I feel good about too before I leave. I went to a community meeting. I want to give a shout out to Charlene Moore. She's our new um alderman. So Murphy's gone. She's in. She did a really good job facilitating our community meeting about not bringing a liquor store into our community. So I'm totally opposed to having another liquor store. Well, what they say, a grocery store that sells liquor versus that's really being a liquor store that sells food, if that. Which was kind of just, like, yeah, you live in another situation. You live in Menominee Falls, but you want to come over here in this alleged food desert bringing spirits. Anyway, that's again, that might be for another day. But I did like the way the community showed up and showed out, and I like that. And that we need more of that. And again, that's my point. Like, if you are a leader or a member of a church in the 53206 community, you need to be investing back into that community by moving back in, not just buying a house to rent out. You need to move back in and let the people, like they say, the police officers need to be part of the community. So do the church people. We all need to be like, where are the people in the neighborhood, the people that you meet each day? We need to be back in a community in which, we can't fix our community if we ain't there. We just not there. And the way these houses are set up, they can be redone to make them very beautiful because some of these houses are beautiful. My house is nice. It needs some work, but it's nice. It's old. It's going to be 100 years this year, and it got some really good characteristics. And the neighborhood is okay, but my part is speaking to the people. And I don't even gonna lie, I don't like my neighbors, but they gotten better. But I don't like them. They need to clean up their yard and stuff. But they got to learn how to do that too. And even though I be on them, I told my husband one day they're gonna appreciate me, because they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. The girl when I first met her, she said, "Oh, your yard is so nice. Yours could be too. Pick that shit up. Get your garbage." When it gets nice again, I'm gonna talk to them like, "Hey, you talking about you want to live nice? Live nice then. Pick that stuff up. What's wrong with you?" But anyway, I always go off kilter. But to close, again, I close on this is that no, I'm not saying that Christianity was not in Africa first, which it wasn't in Africa first. And when we say Africa, we're talking about Northern Africa first. We're talking about mainly how European colonization played a big, big part not only in how it colonized and weaponized us, but how it still is. So so for those who want to argue, Christianity was in Africa way before it was colonized, but that's not the same Christianity that kidnapped us, took us across the transatlantic slave trade, and beat us mercifully for 300-400 years. So do not distort the narrative based on your own glamorization of what you wish things would be like versus what they are. Again, is it important what color Jesus is? Yes. And we don't need to argue that because we know very well anybody of European descent was in Africa would need some sunscreen. And we also know that even though Greeks and Romans call themselves Europeans, they are olive complexion, if not tan. They're darker complexion. And that's because they live in the Mediterranean. And again, I believe the geographical map had changed over the years, over the centuries, that, between conquest or whatever, that it changed. But at the end of the day, just like we're watching how the United States of America is playing out, where they're trying to distort history by making it look like we play no part in what the United States of America is. And again, I have to always throw in my indigenous brothers and sisters too, because they also play a big part in what the United States of America is. And white folks did too, except y'all did more collateral damage than y'all did anything else, and y'all need to fix that. And so with the African Americans I'm talking to, black people, I'm just saying, do not get caught up on saying that somebody is wrong because your information is half of the story or part of the story, or you so excited about finding out some information about, yeah, Christianity is first in Africa. It wasn't first in Africa. It was in Africa, but it wasn't first. And again, I want people to understand that before you knew that, it had nothing to do with it playing a part in colonizing us, using Christianity to colonize us. Let's stick with that story. Let's stick with that narrative. And so I'm out. I've spent my time. And so like, share, enjoy, comment, and I will definitely be back for some more because I have a lot more stuff going on that I'm really trying to put out here, and we'll be just responding to a lot of stuff that I talk about, watch or whatever. Again, Trump, I'm taking a break off of him. I've been doing some other stuff. So with that being said, you guys have a good weekend. We have Martin Luther King holiday on Monday. You know, God bless Martin Luther King, and everything that he did when he was on this earth. And the interesting thing, again, I got so much to say. The interesting thing is Jesus, Malcolm, and Martin all died in their 30s, and they were incredible leaders. And so I look at Jesus like I look at Malcolm and Martin. I look at him being who he was in his time, and how we still follow these two men as well, and what contributions they made to us in our lives. They're not resurrected and they're not a deity, but they're very profoundly influential to what our needs are as human beings in our social justice mission. And that's what Jesus was. He was a social justice missionary, and that's all we can really I can really stand on as far as what my belief is. Okay, so with that being said, when I put my two fingers up, that means I'm done for this conversation. Hope you enjoy, like, share, so we can get this message out. Okay? Talk to y'all soon.